right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Black Man Speak. I'm your co-host, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, the Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. It is Wednesday, March the 5th, 2025. Jim, and if it's Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Man Speak. So with that being said, if you haven't already, please hit that like button to help us with the YouTube algorithm. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new shows are uploaded, which is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. On 5 different streaming platforms. And if you're here watching the show live, invite a friend, a family member, a co-worker, the hell, or just a frenemy, so you have something interesting to talk about for the rest of the week. But this is the show that brings you the leading edge information about the Black community. So, Tom, with that being said, let's do what we do best, which is get to the information sharing.
all right, Jimmy. So it looks like you started a little bit early with your Santa Claus beard this year.
Yes.
All right, folks, we want to welcome you to our show tonight. We have a lot of news to cover and a lot of interesting things to share with you today. We hope that you all enjoyed our show last week on real estate. Of course, we'll have special guests coming on at least a couple of times a month to make sure that we get you the most value. But today we will focus on the news. And for those of you who have not already, go ahead and jump on the chat line. We've already got Miss Tanya on the chat line. I know that cousin Audrey K should be joining the chat line pretty soon. And, we better see Frederick V. Roberts Esquire on the line as well from Prairie View, Texas. So we're going to go ahead and start off with some condolences. We have lost some majors again. I mean, every week we pass by, it seems like, unfortunately, we are losing someone else. So let's go ahead and get started with it. Just today, we have definitely lost an icon within our community in politics. U.S. Congressman and longtime Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner has become an ancestor at the young age of 70. This came just months after he won the Texas's 18th congressional district race. Turner stood as a pillar in the history of the state's largest municipality, Houston, serving 8 years as Houston's mayor and 27 years as Texas's House of Representatives. He represented Texas District 139 from 1989 to 2016. A native Houstonian, Turner was born in 1954 and grew up in the suburb of Acres Homes. In the final stretch of his mayoral race in 2022, he announced he had been quietly battling bone cancer. He was diagnosed with osteosarcoma after doctors discovered a tumor on his jaw during a dental visit when he had complained of a toothache. Turner declared himself cancer-free, however, in 2022. During his mayoral tenure, he garnered support in his campaign to address Houston's potholes, infrastructure, public safety, and flooding. Last year, he stepped out of his brief retirement, entering a head-to-head race to fill the late Sheila Jackson Lee's congressional seat after she passed. Upon announcing he would seek to take up her seat, Turner said only Jackson Lee's passing at a critical moment in the election cycle could bring him out of his retirement. His campaign platform for the congressional seat focused on his efforts to keep federal resources flowing to address hurricane recovery, cancer clusters in Houston's 5th Ward, and police accountability. He also aimed to pass strong reforms to end gun violence epidemics, reduce inequality in public schools, and address rising prices and the high cost of living. So we definitely want to send our kudos to the family, friends, and loved ones who all knew and loved Sylvester Turner. And we wish you our condolences as he becomes an ancestor. He will certainly be remembered.
Yes.
Next, we had another unexpected major news in the passing of Angie Stone. The music world and the fans are still mourning the sudden loss of this talented young lady, Grammy-nominated R&B singer who became an ancestor this past Saturday morning in an unfortunate car accident in Montgomery, Alabama at the tender age of 63. Her voice resonated with multiple generations, and she first entered the music scene professionally in the 1970s as a member of the hip-hop trio The Sequence. Jimmy, I don't know if you remember them, but it was one of the first all-female groups to release a rap single called Funk You Up. in 1979. I actually remember that. She earned the following of a new generation of fans during the emergence of neo soul during the 1990s and 2000s, with popular hits like No More Rain and Wish I Didn't Miss You. Her popularity grew alongside the other popular neo soul artists such as Erykah Badu and Music Soul Child, two very talented artists as well. A native of Columbia, South Carolina, she began singing gospel music as a young child in church, and her father would also take her to see gospel artists perform. Her successful solo career began after her time with the Sequence and another group, Vertical Hold. The later group reached an R&B top 40 with Seems You're Much Too Busy in 1993. Signed with Arista Records as a solo artist and released her first album, Black Diamond, in 1999, which was a certified gold. The album won her 2 Soul Train Lady Soul Era Awards. Stone's second album, Mahogany Soul, released in 2001, was also certified gold. She received her first 3 career Grammy nominations for the album More Than a Woman. She also appeared in several movies and TV shows, including the 2003 film The Fighting Temptations and sitcom Girlfriends. Stone was traveling back to Atlanta after a performance the previous night in Mobile, Alabama. The Alabama law enforcement agency says her Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van overturned on Interstate 65 before it was hit by a semi-truck.
Oh,
Yeah, Stone, who was a passenger joined by other musicians, died on the scene. She was the only person who was deceased. 8 other passengers in the van were injured, but none died other than her. The crash is still under investigation. She was actually due to perform at halftime for the college basketball championship game in Baltimore hours after the crash, said the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Instead, spectators observed a moment of silence at the game. She is survived by 2 children, in addition to 2 grandchildren. Definitely sad, unfortunate, and untimely passing of Angie Stone. We want, of course, send our condolences to her family, those who loved her and listened to her music. Actually, we have one more that we will spend a few minutes briefly on. And Jimmy, knowing that you are a bookworm and read a lot, you may know this guy, Dr. Alvin Toussaint. Passed just recently at the age of 90, a psychiatrist who provided medical care to civil rights activists in the 1960s, Mississippi, and later became a national authority on the effects of racism on Black mental health. Became an ancestor on February the 24th in his home in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. Born on May the 15th, 1934 in East Harlem, New York, Toussaint graduated from Stuyvesant High School before earning a bachelor's degree from Columbia College in 1956 and a medical degree from Cornell University in 1960. Driven by the fight for racial equality, Toussaint served as the Southern Field Director for the Medical Committee for Human Rights from 1965 to 1967, providing care to civil rights workers in Mississippi and working to desegregate hospitals throughout the South. He later joined the faculty at Tufts University Medical School, where he directed a psychiatric program in low-income housing developments. In 1969, he began teaching at Harvard Medical School, ultimately serving as a professor of psychiatry and faculty associate dean for student affairs. His research spanned topics such as grief, parenting, violence, and the experiences of children from interracial families. His 1972 book, Why Blacks Kill Blacks, examined how systematic racism affects Black psychological development. He also co-authored Raising Black Children and Lay My Burdens Down, Suicide and the Mental Health Crisis Among African Americans, highlighting issues often overlooked in mainstream mental health. He is survived by his wife, Dr. Tina Young Toussaint, and their children. So we would like to give, of course, our condolences to the family and those who knew, were taught by him, and of course, who loved him and the work that we did. We have truly lost another giant, Jimmy.
Yes, we have, Tom.
All right, folks. So we're going to go ahead and transition to the meat and potatoes of our show. We have a lot of different things that have been happening in the news over the last week, Jimmy. So let's go ahead and get started, Jimmy. We have about 4 or 5 different things that we're going to have to navigate over the next 50 minutes. So where would you like to start?
Actually, Tom, I want to see if we can broach on this subject of white relevance as it relates to UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. And I'm a big sci-fi fan.
Are you saying they're cousins? What?
I don't know. We don't know what they are. We never quite identified what the UFOs are. We really don't know what the UAPs are, other than they're all unidentified. But I'm a big sci-fi fan, Tom. I thought during my lifetime at some point that we would make some kind of contact with somebody through the radio waves in the galaxy. And, from the books and from the movies, I thought this was coming, Tom, but I'm now I'm a big skeptic now, Tom, that all of this is just one big hoax to keep us distracted from other issues and other problems, and as part of a bigger picture where white people chose to make themselves more relevant what they are. When I look across the landscape, Tom, look at religion, God is white, Jesus is white, all the angels are white. The only entity that's black is the devil.
Well, where does it say that they're white?
It doesn't. It's not recorded anywhere that they're white, Tom. But all the pictures show that they're white. You go to a church and there's a Jesus on the cross. He's white.
Jesus. Okay.
So even the thieves next to Jesus were white. Like I said, the only black person you get in religion today is the devil, and he's black.
Well, you have a good point. I remember watching The Simpsons a long time ago, Jimmy, back when I was young. And of course, the image of God did happen to look Caucasian.
And then when you go to Egypt, Tom, we know Egypt was ruled by various royal families from the Sudans,
African kings and queens, and all of the scientific research identifies their DNA as being dark black people.
Yes, Tom. I mean, they're from Libya, from Sudan, from Kenya, Ethiopia, all those eastern countries that border around Egypt. We know that various royal families from those regions sort of took turns ruling Egypt. I mean, it was a battle, and it was just a matter of which family won out at any particular time. And then I think even last week when you showed or maybe 2 weeks ago, when you put out a picture of the unmasking of one of the pharaohs, whose tomb was found in the Valley of the Queens. Tom, he looked very black to me.
Yes, he did.
But you go through the history books, every damn pharaoh that displayed in history is a white-skinned Caucasian person. And so all throughout history, he's been whitewashed. Religion's been whitewashed, Tom. And now even
the UFOs now are going to.
Oh yeah, the whole aliens. We have some pictures here we'll share with people. Tom, right. We have the reptilians who are, I guess, more lizard-like people.
That looks interesting.
So those are called the reptilians. And then we have some that look like the praying mantis, the mantis aliens.
Okay. Big head, big eyes.
Right. And then we have the EVs, the grays, which are like 3 to 4 feet tall, big heads, skinny necks. And Tom, I'm going to submit to you that this is not even humanly possible. This wouldn't even evolve anywhere in the universe or alternate universe. Generally, when a baby is born, babies don't have the neck muscles to keep their fat heads up. So neck muscles and shoulder muscles are one of the first things they develop. Even before they learn to walk, they learn to hold their heads up. And Tom, you can't have a 3-foot alien with a goddamn 50-pound head with no neck to support it. There's no way. You couldn't even maintain your balance with a head that big. And certainly you couldn't defend yourself. I mean, you get some teenage kid, with a bat, and he could take out a whole army of these goddamn grays. And so those are the EVs. And then they've recently come up and discovered two new groups of aliens, Tom. One of them's called the Nordics.
That just looks like somebody from near the North Pole.
And of course, the Nordics, Tom, are white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and that supposed the story is they have found a way to integrate into our societies and find positions of leadership. And so they work from the inside to cover up the stories about aliens, Tom. So these are the Nordics, white, the Nordic aliens who happen to be white. And then another group of aliens, Tom, are called the tall white. Now, these Nordics are in Europe, supposedly, but the tall whites are here in America. So this is kind of what they look like. Tall, slender, white people, very blonde. And, the other interesting thing, Tom, is the damn aliens never have clothes on. Where are the clothes? Did they not get cold? Did they not need a dress or some pants or shoes or socks? They're always naked. You can't really tell what gender they are because all the bodies look the same to me. So with that being said, Tom, you can tell me what your thoughts are. Where are the black aliens? Where are the Latino aliens? Where are the Asian aliens? Are they, life started in Africa as far as modern man's concerned. And you would think that if the aliens are going to abduct anyone, do some hybrid experiments with, they want to go back to the original Earthlings where it all started, not these hybrid offshoots that we call white people.
Well, Jimmy, you bring up a very good point. There is an African saying, and I'm not exactly sure who was the first one to say it, but they said until the lion has his own authors, that the hunters will always receive the glory in the stories. And so I think my take on this is because much of our history, practically all of our history, has been usurped and categorized as Africans by non-Africans, then the non-Africans have the authority, or they take the authority to shape the narrative of what's going to be seen. And I think that is obviously what happens possibly with these UFOs. I don't know very many brothers and sisters who are talking about UFOs. We've got bigger fish to fry and bigger problems to be concerned about. But since you have folks who have the leisurely time and the flexibility to research and write about UFOs, of course, go to Egypt and all of these other places, Kenya, where Louis Leakey acknowledged that the first people were Africans and they were black Africans.
Well, the first, the Homo sapiens, when we kind of evolved from even going back before that, the Homo erectus, the oldest fossils were found in Ethiopia by Leakey, 2.5 to 3 million years old, Tom, and and then from the recreation based on the artist's rendition. This was a black woman with some hair, from fur on her body. But you could definitely tell this was a black person. And then to go from Homo erectus to Homo sapien, which is happened about 300,000 years ago. Well, those are all black people, according to the fossil records, Tom. And white people don't hit the archaeological records until 8 to 10,000 years ago. Black folks have been on this planet populating the world, Tom, for over 300,000 years, almost 300,000 years before white people popped up. But somehow white people are the most relevant on the planet. They're everywhere. They make themselves relevant, Tom. This is not by accident. It's not by history, not by science, because none of science supports the argument. This is all just their personal doing, Tom. This is just their insipid need to be relevant, and they continue to look for a missing link that's not there. But when you look at the archaeological scales, Tom, from primate to ape to caveman to Homo erectus to Homo sapien, Tom, by the time you get to the end, it's a white person. It's like there's not a black person anywhere in this in this picture, but the end result is a white person, which we know historically, scientifically, that it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, I think part of the response to your question, and I'm not going to say this is how all of it happened, but there's a book that I picked up years ago, and I don't think that I'm putting it in the right order, but basically it came down to guns, diseases, and the Bible. And I think unfortunately for the indigenous Americans who were here, for the Africans who were trading with indigenous Americans before Christopher Colon accidentally thought he ran into India and he was actually in the New World, that they used superior weapons, which the Africans did not need because they had everything that they needed. They used diseases and they used the Bible in order to either physically capture or to emotionally colonize the Africans on the continent. Of course, the Indians in East India, you talk about the indigenous America, they almost wiped out an entire they did actually wipe out an entire group of indigenous Americans on the country of Jamaica. I remember going to Jamaica years ago, and I was wondering why the rivers were named after Indian people, and they said, well, they were named after Indians. Like, well, where are all the Indians at? It's like,
Tom, they're not there anymore.
They got eradicated, and that almost happened in the United States of America as well. And so at the end of the day, when you're able to get weapons of mass destruction, take out people, when you're able to use the disease to eradicate entire cultures of people, and when you're able to exercise the commercialization of monotheism in order to mentally and emotionally colonize massive groups of people, then they take everything they want.
That is true, Tom. That is true. So for those of us, Tom, that look up into the sky thinking that I predict, here's my prediction, Tom, that one of these days we are going to make contact with another alien civilization. And boy, I mean, this may be the nail in the coffin, Tom, when the first bodies that step off some ship are black.
And I think somebody's going to turn red, beat red when that happens.
I mean, after all of this energy and all of this hoopla that we've gone through, that we finally made contact with someone and they're able to come visit us, and they open the latch up and let the ladder down, and the first person that walks off is a black African-looking person, Tom. That's going to be the nail in the coffin at that point, man. And I don't think white people will ever be able to recover.
Jimmy, I think there's not a lot of people having heart attacks. Matter of fact, I remember there's a show that I watched years ago, not that many years ago, called Boondocks. And, there was this episode where they finally revealed that Jesus was black. All the white people on the show got into this fight, and they were killing and chopping each other up because they could not believe that they could have been hoodwinked and Jesus was actually a black man.
Tom, one of these days we're going to face the realization that is true. And it may be the aliens that come and tell us that, hey, the Jesus that y'all worship was actually a black man, and maybe coming from the aliens, it'll ring true. But I think the powers that be are going to do everything possible to keep Jesus white, to keep God white. Although, Tom, the earliest depiction of Jesus, which hang in the quarters of the Pope's quarters at the Vatican and the Orthodox Church of Russia, the earliest drawings that we can find have Jesus being a black man.
Correct.
The scripture in the Bible has him described as black. And even when Paul wrote to Caesar, he described Jesus as the most energetic person he's ever met, but described him as a person who had been out in the sun too long. His skin looked like it was burnt.
Correct.
So once again, he was a brown black man in a brown black country, in a region of the world that's brown and black. But now we're supposed to somehow believe that he's this blonde, blue-eyed, wavy hair white guy. So.
Yeah, very true, Jimmy. So what do we do with this information, and what do we do with this revelation in terms of the relevance?
Tom, what we do with it is that we have to understand how much white people are willing to go to stay relevant. And why is it important? Because it makes them feel important. So we need to not fabricate the truth like they do, but we need to certainly take the truth and be willing to speak it. There's nothing wrong with black churches hanging up a black Jesus and having a black God in their Bible. and having black angels in their Bible and letting black people know how relevant they actually are. We don't have to make up stories. We don't have to lie about black people being the mother and father to humanity. We don't have to lie about you being all the descendants of pharaohs, all the pharaohs and the queens over Egypt and that region were all black peoples, Tom. We don't have to lie about that. I mean, Asians have their history. Europeans have their history. Even Central and South America have their history. So there's nothing wrong with black people being able to speak up about the relevance of our history, which we don't do, Tom. We don't say anything. We allow these lies to be perpetrated on us, and we participate with it because I'd be willing to bet you go into any average black church in America, and the first thing you're going to be confronted with is a white Jesus hanging up on the wall. And so we participate in the lie also, and we need to stop. So I mean, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter really to anyone whether Jesus was white or black, whether God's white or black, except we're all supposed to operate on the basis of truth. And we're not supposed to participate in the lies and cover-ups. So with that being said, Tom, it's important for us, it should be important for us to simply tell the truth. You know, that our relevance is based on truth, and we don't have to fabricate this and make this up or pretend that we're something that we're not. And so, you know, once we all operate on the basis of truth, I think we'll get along a lot better.
Well, Jimmy, we have to remember this thing when things, come up and we see one thing and somebody else tells you it's something else. So that's something that we have to remember, and we have to be prepared to fight for.
Yes. So, Tom, we got a little time left. Why don't we go ahead and segue into our next story? So, what's our next story?
All right, we're going to acknowledge a couple of people on the chat line. We've got
what do we have?
We got Brother Freddie Roberts. Good evening, everyone, and how's it going in this blessed day? I want to thank him for joining. We got cousin Audrey K, who is on the chat line as well. Said people create their own illusions to stay relevant. I would agree with that. And she also said, if in the beginning our Creator started His creation in heaven and put us on earth, then we are the aliens on this earth in dirt bodies.
Touche. I agree with that.
And we've got Counselor Lisa on. Hey, thank you for joining us this evening as well. So let's go ahead and get to some more of our stories, Jimmy. So I had, for those of you who kind of pay attention to what's going on south of federal politics, the Texas State Legislature has introduced Senate Bill 13, which could create school library advisory councils largely made up of parents, which would give school boards rather than librarians the final say over new books that are introduced in a library, and a bill that would give parents more power over which books their children can read in public school libraries will soon go before Texas senators for a full vote. So folks, you better get your letter writing campaign out. The measure was approved this past Tuesday in a 10-1 vote in the Senate Committee on Education K-12, introduced last month by Senator Angela Paxton, Republican out of McKinney. Senate Bill 13 would represent an overhaul of how schools decide what books are placed in their libraries. It would require that school boards, rather than librarians, have the final say over which new books or materials can be put into school libraries. The bill would also create a way for parents to challenge any library book and have it removed from shelves until the school board decides whether the materials are allowed.
So, Tom, having served on the McKinney Library Board for 2 years, I can tell you that the number one complaint that we get from parents were sexually explicit books that were sort of put in the children's area. And this is dealing with the alphabet people. So I never really heard any complaints about books like, what's it, Lady Chatterley or something like that with straight people in them being an issue. But the books dealing with alphabet, sex, and homosexuality and lesbian sex and how to do it, somehow being exposed or being close to the children there was always the number one complaint. But the library board is an advisory board. And so even though we can give recommendations to the library director with suggestions that we get from parents, it was still up to the library director to implement them or not implement based on how he or she saw fit. So I'm in favor of changing the structure of these boards to give the board more power over the direction of the library. Uh, So rather than being just an advisory board, be a board where you can pass the resolutions. If you want to order some books out of the library, then order them out. It's all public records, and how you voted and what your suggestions and recommendations were, and then what the end results were. So, but I think that the chief thing that's driving this, at least here in McKinney, where I was on that library board for a couple of years, were parents who were sort of just sick and tired of having their young kids exposed to books about gay sex.
Well, what for those folks who would say, you know what, if you don't, want your kids reading them, just don't check those books out.
Well, Tom, but that's the thing, though, is that once you get a library card, you have the right to check out any book in the library.
Correct.
And so I know my recommendation was that, and actually they acted on it a little bit, was to move the books into a certain section away from the kids section, like put them on different floors, make it a little more difficult. But I actually would recommend that you actually lock this area off. That sexually books that are sexually explicit or have explicit language that you think is damaging to kids, put them in the area of the library where it takes you need to use your card to access that area, and if you're under 18, you can't. And so, if you need something out of that area, have your parents come with you and check it out. Otherwise, you're restricted to just the safe areas of the library where books are more age appropriate for you.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not a librarian, but I mean, I would. At what age is anything sexually explicit appropriate, or what is the age at which what you consider to be sexually explicit language in a book is even appropriate to put in a library? Because I wouldn't think that would be for grammar school children. I quite frankly wouldn't say for junior high, even though if we found out, if we're telling the truth about what's going on in junior high schools, quite frankly, in some grammar schools, they are already doing that stuff. And it's primarily been because of what they're exposed to on social
Sure.
media and TV shows for that matter.
So some love story books where they describe a lovemaking scene, like you said, kids are already participating in sex. They already kind of know the mechanics behind it. But I think where I would draw the line, Tom, is the books that actually are more instruction manuals on how to have lesbian sex or gay sex, homosexual sex, how to protect yourself, how to lube up, and all these other, if it's a how-to manual, then yeah, put it in an adult section.
I don't know that I would even want that in a school library.
Well, not in a school library. We're talking public libraries here.
Okay, public library.
School libraries are governed a little differently. But so these advisory boards for the public.
So we're talking about the public library, like your local municipal public library.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and so with those kind of books, if it's hardcore how-to stuff, yeah, put that away for adults. Don't don't make that available to kids of any age, 18 or younger. If you're 17 or younger, then these books are off limits. I don't care what you do with your life privately. When you become an adult, if you want to read these adult sort of content books, more power to you. But until you become 18, then these books are off limits. And I do know that the director of the library here, a young man named Spencer, was his thing was, well, all the books are available if you have a library card. It's up to parents to regulate that and govern that. So we're just going to put the books out there because we have a sizable alphabet community also who want these books. And so you try to accommodate everybody. But I'm sorry, Tom, there are just some content that shouldn't be available to kids, whether it's straight sex or homosexual sex.
All right. Well, if we're talking about truth and we're talking about the facts and protecting that truth, you're going to also have folks who are going to argue against books that tell the truth about this country and its history and what was done by one culture of people to another culture of people in order to build the economy and the power of it. I mean, right now we have the state of Texas and its legislators trying to literally what I would call whitewash what was the transatlantic slave trade that was the foundation of building the wealth and power of this country. And there are a lot of people who don't want to see that because they feel that their kids' feelings might get hurt if they recognize that their ancestors were part and parcel of exploiting one group of people in order to enrich another.
Right. And so, Tom, I wish that was the main issue when I was on the library board here in McKinney to deal with. Unfortunately, it was not. I think we can all agree that we should do our best to maintain history so we can all share it and have a viewpoint from it. Even the ugly history needs to be protected, just so we know where we came from and what people are capable of, just so we know that we're not going to ever go back there. But the sexually explicit material should not be allowed or should not allowed to be born those same protections. And so there are some things I trust parents to sit down with their kids and have talks with them about sex and about, what you engage with another person, either the same sex or different sex or however you want to structure it. But those are conversations for parents to have with their children and not something that the government should get involved with. And so having books that tell you how to have gay and lesbian sex, or even straight sex for that matter, should be pushed off and made unavailable to kids.
Well, so be it. I would agree that parents should be the final arbiter.
They should be.
In the case of what happens there. Got a comment by Ms. Tanya, says, well, in that case, the solvent would be 18 or older for certain books of that nature. My leanings are towards the history of this country. And I mean the facts, the true history of this country. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes a person feel or a certain group of people feel, because quite frankly, the group of people that it happened to, what about them? They need to understand the truth in addition to the folks who victimize another group of people. But let's go ahead and go to our next story, because we do have a couple of other stories we want to make sure that we cover. All that we said is we would highly recommend that you stay engaged with not just what's going on at the federal level in our government, but really it's your state and your local government that impact you the most. And so do be aware of what's going on in your state legislatures. Do be aware of what's going on in your council meetings and or your commissioners meetings at the council level as well, because that's where the rubber hits the road on the most part when it comes to you. Let's go to our next story. We have a talk show host who is launching a petition to actually a campaign urging President Donald Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer who killed George Floyd, and the president's top ally Elon Musk believed that the move that is the petition is something to think about. On Tuesday, March the 4th, Ben Shapiro announced a petition backing a public letter to Trump, arguing how Chauvin was unjustly convicted of Floyd's murder, during which the ex-officer pinned the knee on the 46-year-old man's neck for roughly 9 minutes until he met his demise. And so he is going to try to see if he can get enough public support to, and well, he may not even require public support in order to get Trump to possibly influence a pardoning of Derek Chauvin. But this is something that I just thought just happened. I thought was kind of intriguing.
Yeah, I'm not sure that if Chauvin was convicted on any federal crimes. I thought, those were state crimes.
Right.
He pled guilty to a murder conviction, which is a state crime. There may have been some civil rights charges thrown in there just for protection's sake in case the murder charge didn't stick. I'm not totally sure, which Trump could pardon him from that, but I don't think his jail sentence was based on any civil rights crime. And civil rights generally is a 5 to 10 year sentence at best. And so I'm not sure if he was convicted on any of those where Trump could have any influence. And I don't think that Trump will lend any weight behind this effort. I don't think he was a big fan of I don't think he was a big fan of the riots, man, or what happened. And I don't think he wanted to put his name or put any weight behind trying to pardon someone who's convicted of this. I'll be totally honest, from looking at it after the fact, there were some probably errors in judgment which they should have taken it up on appeal. But I guess when you plead guilty, there's very little to appeal with letting some testimony come in with alternative views about what actually killed the young man. Whether it was the asphyxiation, man, from the knee, whether it's adrenaline from his body, whether it's drugs that he had in his system, or a combination thereof. But I'll say this, is that despite all of that, I think they mostly got the verdict correctly. You may not have been totally 100% responsible for his death, but at the point that a person is telling you they can't breathe and you have them under control by being handcuffed, that's a time that you release whatever pressure you have on them. You turn them over, try to make them comfortable, sit them up. And if they need medical care at that point, you go seek medical care. You don't continue to keep a knee on them. And so technically, maybe you killed them, maybe you didn't. Maybe it was a combination of adrenaline and some other drugs coupled with the difficulty in breathing. Who knows? But for the part that you played in it, Tom, I think the sentence that he received and pled guilty to was probably correct. So the punishment for me doesn't need to change.
Right. Well, I'm looking at a DOJ website, Jimmy, and it says that the former Officer Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 252 months in prison with credit for time and served for depriving George Floyd Jr. and the then 14-year-old child of their constitutional rights. Chauvin pleaded guilty in federal court to violating federal criminal civil rights statute on two separate occasions. First, Chauvin pleaded guilty to willfully depriving Mr. Floyd of his constitutional right to be free from the use of unreasonable force, you're correct, by a police officer, resulting in Mr. Floyd's bodily injury and death. In the plea document, Chauvin agreed that the sentencing for this crime should be based on the sentence for second-degree murder because he acted willfully and in callous and wanton disregard of the consequences of Mr. Floyd's life. Chauvin also pleaded guilty to willfully depriving a then 14-year-old child of his constitutional right to be free from the use of unreasonable force by a police officer, resulting in child's. Now, I'm not exactly sure who the.
So what was the plea deal? How many years? Or
he got 252 months in prison with credit for time served for depriving Floyd of his constitutional rights.
Okay. Well, Tom, like I said, generally those civil rights convictions, they generally max out around 5 to 10 years. So looks like it's probably about 12 years on each count in this case. Excuse me. And if he was willing to plead guilty to it, Tom, then he needs to accept that what he pled guilty to. So, and once again, in 20 years minus his time served, if he lives long enough, Tommy, he'll be able to get on with his life. So the person that you killed is graveyard dead. So this is a problem I always have. Justice system, what we think is just, is not really just at all when one person is dead and the other person get to get on with their life after serving some time. And I know there's no parole system, probation or parole in the federal system, so he would have to serve most of that sentence out unless someone comes along and frees him. But I don't think Trump will use any political capital to free Chauvin in this particular case.
You don't think?
No.
All right.
Well, you know what? I shouldn't say that because a lot of times presidents on their way out the door,
on the way out,
do some wacky stuff and some crazy people get on these pardon lists. So will he do anything now? No.
I wouldn't be
doing
surprised
anything on his last day in office. Could Chauvin possibly make a list, make it on the list at that point in 4 years? Then there's a good possibility he could at that point. So
I would not be surprised if he did it early and not on the way out, just to show an exercise of power.
He wouldn't do it earlier, but on his way out the door, because a lot of times the lists are put together not by the president himself. The president just signs it on his way out the door. It's put together by his staff. So if the staff, somebody on the staff want to add a few names to the list, it's generally like 1,000, 1,500. I mean, it's a huge list. And no one's really checking or vetting. It's just, hey, do you know anyone you want to add to the list before we take it to the president on the last thing he does? And people will God knows who they'll put on the list, man. So it could happen in 4 years. So we'll
Well,
see.
I mean, if he if he pardons them, maybe he'll pardon
Who's
Aura
that?
Kelly.
Oh, no, man. I know for certain that R. Kelly is not on federal charges. Those are definitely state charges. I'm fairly certain child abuse and some of the sexual assault stuff, those have got to be state crimes, Tom.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and go to some more uplifting, positive news. I
Yeah, we
saw.
have some uplifting stories, Tom.
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Hey, one of our favorites, Serena Williams, has expanded her business portfolio into Canada as a new owner of the WNBA's Toronto Tempo, the league's first expansion team outside of the United States, Jimmy. So now, Serena, among her other accolades and many things that she has accomplished, she is now an owner of a WNBA franchise, and congratulations to her. The Toronto Tempo is Canada's first WNBA team. And Williams said in a press release that being part of the team's ownership group showcases the true value of potential of female athletes. Canada is not unfamiliar territory for the 23-time Grand Slam champion who made her professional tennis debut in Quebec City in 1995 at 14 years old. Williams' newest venture with the Toronto Tempo brings her back to the North American country for business alongside team owners Larry Tannenbaum, chairman of Kilmer Sports Ventures.
Well, Tom, I'm happy that she stepped up to the plate. I would have liked to see more black men step up to the plate and put together investment groups and ownership groups to buy into professional sports at all different levels, man. For all of the complaints we get about the lack of black ownership. So, excuse me. So I'm glad Serena did the right thing, and congratulations to her. And for others that are in her position, I would encourage them to do the same, Tom. So let's stop talking about the lack of black ownership and participate. Get involved, put your money up. That's how you solve it. So no one's going to give you a franchise.
Yeah, we only. I don't believe Serena has reached the billionaire status yet, but owning these teams is a good way to grow your wealth and your value over several years, Jimmy. I think there are a handful. I don't know that we have 20 billionaires who look like folks within our community. I think there are probably close to 1,500 white billionaires in the United States, give or take. So we've got some treading to do, and it is within our grasp to definitely generate hundreds of thousands of dollars if we exercise our economic power intelligently, and to, of course, increase the number of billionaires, because that's the only way that you can, in order to claim your leverage. I mean, let's be very clear, Jimmy. If someone can literally, buy an election, hey, you can do a lot of things with the right amount of money.
Well, Tom, I'm going to say this. Unlike our GM owner, hold on.
Uh-oh.
Serena got the sneezing attack. Unlike our GM owner here in Dallas, Tom, Serena has been a champion, been ranked number one, won a bunch of championships on the women's side. And so I would imagine that her management style, what she brings to the team, is a winning attitude. I doubt she's just going to want to be happy just to be sitting up in the stands watching her team with mediocre play. I'm pretty sure she's going to bring the energy, Tom, that, hey, I've won. I know what it takes to be a winner. And so we need to draft players who are winners, and we need to have a coach who wants to win at all costs. And if we're not winning championships or competing for championships, hell, nobody's going to be happy. We're all going to be miserable here. So I think she'll bring the right kind of energy and the right kind of attitude to women's sports. And maybe that'll help them with their TV contract time and negotiations for the players to get more money.
Are you trying to say that Jerry doesn't have a winning disposition, Jimmy?
Yeah, I don't know what Jerry has, but Tom is not focused on winning. We're bringing in mediocre coaches, not going after free agency, letting Samuels, man, get. I mean, look, if he goes any place else besides one of our division rivals, fine. You can say, hey, Yeah, we wanted him and didn't want him. We weren't willing to rate it. A 5th-round draft pick, Tom.
I mean,
That's what you give up.
they got Deebo for a kazoo and a whistle.
Oh man, for a bag of dirt, Tom. if nothing else, you can offer them a 4th round just to sabotage a deal.
But
Like, hey, we don't need him, which we do. We need a number 2. We need a number 3. Deebo, I mean, he would make a great addition to take some of the pressure off of Dak and off of CeeDee Lamb in the passing game. And the running game is not that great, but this guy's a wide receiver running back.
He is.
You throw him a little screen and let him do his thing. He's hard to bring down. Tom, for a 5th-round draft pick, this is what it took to get him away from the 49ers, and we sat down on our hand and did nothing? Come on, man.
I thought Jerry was one of the most powerful GM owners in the NFL. I don't understand how he let this happen in his division.
Let it happen, Tom.
I mean, Deebo Samuel, I mean, this dude is a beast. For anyone who watches the NFL out there, and you've seen how Deebo Samuel has not just run over the Dallas Cowboys, but a lot of teams in the league. This guy is big. He's physical. He catches the ball. He creates separation. And
he has 1 year left on his contract, Tom. This is a contract year for him. He's going to go out there and play his heart out this last year. So even if you just brought him in put him on a 1 year deal, knowing that he's going to cost you too much after that in free agency, then bring him in for 1 year for a 5th-round draft pick. We could have offered that up, Tom, and maybe threw in another scrub player to sweeten the deal up. But even if you just keep him around for 1 year, it's worth it. You don't let him go to the Washington Commanders, Tom. You don't let him go to Philadelphia. You don't let him go with any team you have to play against that you're trying to compete against. Now the Commanders are better than what they were, and we hadn't gained 1 inch of ground on improving our talent to compete against them.
Yep, and both the Commanders and the Eagles, of course, were in the NFC Championship. And, of course, the Eagles end up winning the Super Bowl by beating the Kansas City Chiefs. The Eagles, obviously, a very solid team. I don't think that they are losing too many folks through new contracts this offseason, Jimmy. And now the Washington Commanders, who win the NFC Championship, as good as they are with Jaden Daniels, their rookie quarterback, now sophomore season, and their new head coach, Dan Quinn, who was the former defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. They never let another one get away for someone they just fired. They've got two of the best teams in the NFC, if not in the league right now. I would say both of them for sure are top 8. Top 10.
Peyton goes to the Saints and win a championship. And we let our defense coordinator go to the Commanders. And so they owe us, Tom. They should be thanking the Cowboys.
And let's not forget, Kellen Moore, who was a former
offensive coordinator with the Eagles. They won the Super Bowl. Another one, Tom. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't the head coach, but, I mean, he was offensive coordinator. So yet another trophy that should have a little asterisk at the bottom that says, we give thanks to the Cowboys for Moore and helping us win a championship.
And
so
the New Orleans Saints may be doing that pretty soon now that they got Kellen Moore as their head coach, who was the former offensive coordinator, who Jerry got rid of because, of course, Mike McCarthy wanted to call plays, so they got rid of Kellen Moore and then hired Brian what is the new head coach's name?
Schottenheimer.
Yeah, Brian Schottenheimer. Jimmy, I didn't even know he was the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys at the time.
Nobody knew, unless people that were with the Cowboys organization didn't know, because Fluffy Duff called plays from the sidelines. Like, okay, you're an offensive coordinator, but what do? Are you quarterbacking the coaches, the running back, or the QBs? Do you design the offense or set the plays up? No, Fluffy Duff was doing all of that. I'm not sure what the guy did for 3 years as offensive coordinator.
And what we find interesting is that black coaches who have significant experience on the OC or the DC side are not hired because owners say, well, they don't do any play calling. But this guy who's not done any play calling gets hired after being with the Cowboys for 3 years as an OC and not calling one play.
That's true, Tom. And even with Pete Carroll up in Seattle, nobody knows what he did there either. So he didn't do any play calling.
Because we know Pete Carroll was running that show.
Yeah, Pete Carroll totally ran the show, Tom. He was a very hands-on coach. And so how this guy has climbed the ladder to become coach of the most visible professional sports franchise in the world is beyond me, but it happens, Tom. It doesn't happen to us, but for them, it happens quite frequently. So I
All
don't
right,
want to make it
Jimmy.
a white or black thing, but it is what it is.
Last sports conversation. Are the Dallas Mavericks officially dead and buried for this season?
Yes, they are. The injuries have plagued them, and even though they have some people returning, I think AD is probably close to returning. Gafford is probably close. I'm not sure about Blake Love, but you know what? They should all just rest now. Don't come back. Continue to stay on the hurt list. Play some of the young guys like Brown and Moses. The kid we picked up from LA in the trade, man. Let these guys, let Harden play, let Marshall play. We're not going to win very many games. Out of 20 games left, we may win 4 if we're lucky. But let the young guys play, man, and go and write this season off because we just had too many injuries. Get everybody healthy. If AD needs surgery, go ahead and get the surgery, man. So you don't keep having to deal with this during the season, this nagging injury. Get everybody healthy, and we just come back next year.
Yep, absolutely. And we got a couple of chats on the guy. We have Miss Erotica, who's on the chat line.
Erotica, okay.
He says Deebo wants to play with his former GM, Adam Peters. It has nothing to do with Jerry. It's time for y'all to find a new team. Cowboys haven't been my team since Jimmy Johnson was coaching, by the way. But all that being said is that I'm talking about Jerry being the most powerful GM owner in the league, allowing someone of that level of talent already having to compete against 2 teams that are, quite frankly, better than them, and to allow one of them to get even better. I mean, the Giants, God bless them. I don't know what they're going to do, but maybe they can find a quarterback in the draft somehow. But yeah, Cowboys, between the coach they just hired and them not getting anything in the offseason for now looking to maybe the last couple of years, Jimmy, I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants some way figure out how to win at least 1 or 2 games with them this season.
Well, Tom, you know what? I'm not a bandwagon person. I've been a Cowboy fan since I can remember. But I'm opening the door for a second team in my life. And I think that may be the Commanders, only because I want someone to take down the Philadelphia Chickenheads and don't want to see them repeat. Don't want to see them win another NFC championship. And right now, the best bet of that happening is for the Commanders to get better, which they already have. I want to see them continue to improve. So they are my second team that I will follow this year. Because, generally, if the Cowboys are not playing, I don't watch football. Generally, if they make it to the playoffs and get knocked off, I don't watch the rest of the playoffs or the Super Bowl. But I'm going to follow the Commanders this year as my second team. So I will have 2 teams. I'm still going to follow the Cowboys, bless their hearts. But I'm going to put all my hopes into that Commander basket that they can tape down the Philadelphia Chickenheads.
All right, we will see what happens. We got plenty of time until the NFL season starts back, so we won't have to spend too much time on that today. But hey, it'll be a very interesting year because now that the Detroit Lions, who were supposed to be the heir apparent, lost both their OC and their DC, we'll see if they're able to rebuild under that leadership, and we will definitely be talking about that soon. So I think we have exhausted our agenda. We've actually got 2 minutes left, Jimmy. So we want to thank everybody.
Were there any stories when we left some meat on the bones, Tom?
No, we got through everything today, bro.
Oh, okay. I was going to say we can roll them over to next week if that's the case. So, but if you're watching the show live tonight, please come back and visit us next week. Don't be afraid to call into the show. You can post through the chat line, or you can join the conversation if you want. Don't be shy. And we'll post the number up here, and you can tell us what you whatever comments or questions that you may have, or announcements that you may have, with something that's going on in your city, state, or in your region of the world.
All right, folks. So with that being said, we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Appreciate all the comments. in the chat line. And next week, Jimmy, I believe that we may have news, but if not next week, the week after, we're going to have Brother Greg Harrington.
Hey, Brother Harrington back. Okay.
We'll get Brother Harrington back. I think he'll be talking about, we've already talked about public speaking. I think he may be talking about the Airbnb business next, but we'll find out.
If you're interested and ever thought about doing the Airbnb business, this will be a good show to watch. Come out, bring your notepad, bring your questions that you may have on how to get started, because we're bringing a guy that's going to help explain the ins and outs of that business. So once again, doing our best to help promote Black business.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.
All right.